best practices for mass content development. And what we like to think about is that for anything that we do, right, we should always start with a plan, okay? So if we're thinking about our business objective, if it's driving end user adoption, well, we need to have a lot of content ready for our audience that's going to be delivered to them, but how are we going to create that exact content? So Neil, I'm looking to you to maybe share some of your best practices around getting started with this, please.
Yeah, certainly, Emmett. So sometimes we come into projects where they're midway through the project and they need support of an existing author team. And what we see is that new authors are they're just getting to grips with SAP Enable now. It's their first time and they just want to start creating their first book page or their first simulation. And it's completely natural. And often we find it's encouraged, particularly in projects where there's such a tight deadline and so much to do. The downside to this isn't always initially apparent, but down the line, when the dust settles, we find it can cause really big problems. Developing content without a plan can lead to inconsistent output, an unstructured work area as well, which in turn makes that maintenance and potential localization of content really difficult. It can make for more problematic publishing, particularly when using multiple channels, and can lead to duplication of content, which is something we really want to avoid. So in our experience, if there's a well thought out content development plan put in place right from the start, it really pays dividends in the future. And this, of course, includes an agreed production workflow, even if that feature within SAP Enable now isn't used. So some additional things then to consider early on in the project include deciding right from the outset who's going to be responsible for each step of the process. It's from script creation, data management for the test system, right through to that approval and publishing, and even beyond into the maintenance. There's going to need to be support outside of the authoring team. Once it's been established who's doing what, it becomes quickly apparent how that flow of work should be established and the various triggers between each states. Then an agreed course structure backed by a good suite of templates and approved images and colors need to be created and signed off and approved. And finally, the approach to delivery really needs to be agreed based on the learner's needs and the best way to achieve the objectives of the project. Once all of these are established and codified as part of a standards and guidelines, and the SAP Enable Now resources are made available, and the work area toolbox is made available to all authors, that role of the authors is so much simpler and the user experience is far more consistent.
Neil, thank you so much for that. I think, a basic one of getting the plan in place, but sometimes we can see that it's overlooked. But from an author's perspective, what are your top tips for creating really engaging content?
Yeah, so again, this is a topic I could talk about all day, but some really quick tips just to share with you. To avoid that cognitive overload that we can encounter in learning and remove that barrier, it's really a good idea to limit the number of steps in a given simulation. But it's also good to limit the number of interactions in any given steps because that prioritizes the most important information that you want to share. We really suggest clients build out common animations and interactive content into their book pages, but do so in templates because then you don't overload your authors and it makes for a more consistent and engaging user experience. When adding objects, it's really important to use logical, consistent names throughout the authoring team so everybody can work collaboratively. Finally, and critically, it's really important to always consider the user experience first and foremost.